Do you love quilting with charm squares, or do you prefer fat quarters? Well, that's okay. With this quilt, you can choose your favorite. Either one will work. This is the Meandering Path quilt, and I am anxious to show you how this pattern goes together. I'm Lea Louise from Inspired Quilting by Lea Louise, and this is a fast and easy quilt that's made with 5-inch squares cut from fat quarters, so you can start with whatever fabrics you use. It's also a great stash buster. Take a look behind me at all the different fabrics in that quilt. There are a couple variations that I want to show you, and then we're going to get into the tutorial and get down to business and make a quilt. So let's go ahead and get started right now. Here's a sneak peek at what we're making today. This is the fourth of this pattern that I've made, the Meandering Paths, which is a link down below if you're interested. But I want to show you the versatility in the look of this depending on the background being these little squares here. So this was predominantly blue. I added my usual, pops of color that I need to have in every quilt, and I love how it turned out. But I want to show you some others that you might get some ideas for yourself, what kind of a quilt you'd like. This is a very simple quilt in that there's only a few colors. I think there's like 3 little fat quarters and some pieces of pink and gray. And I use the gray for the background. But notice how different this looks with that gray background. The white tends to be stark and stand out and really makes everything pop. This gray ties into these. So if you want a background that's not quite so dominant, blending it with some of your blocks works really, really well. So that's an idea, but this just is the sweetest little baby quilt. This is the most recent one that I've made, and you may recall the pink background that we talked about. It's a pink watercolor with some bits of fuchsia in there, but it's a muted kind of washed out watercolor, and I love how it works with all these different fabrics. Every color is in here, and it works so well with that pink, and it gives the whole quilt a totally different hue. It kind of creates that sweet little pink color into all the blocks, and there's a lot of blocks that work really well with the pink. Ordinarily, there are some here that I probably wouldn't put in, but because there's such a melange of fabrics, this works out really, really well. So this is another idea. Now, if you have fabrics that have white backgrounds, these are no white in these blocks at all. So I wouldn't want to use a white with this because these blocks have so much white in the background. A white block in between works great because it's going to highlight those prints. So see how many have white backgrounds in them, and by using this white, it really creates a great contrast for all these colors to really pop, and it looks wonderful. And I love this. This is probably one of my favorites, and it's a hydrangea print. It's called the Lea collection, so of course I love it. It's my namesake, and I just think it turned out so pretty. This is the larger version, which is the lap quilt, which is the size in the pattern. But this is where we're going today, and again, we're using the white background because a lot of the prints that I have white accents in them, and that's where we're going. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to share this with you. Well, look what I got in the mail, and I actually waited to open it to show you my most recent acquisition. I love getting my fat quarters every month from the Fat Quarter Shop. And look at these. Aren't these pretty? This is the Hoffman Valley Batiks Azure Dreams. And look at these colors. Okay, we definitely have to open this up. Now, I had already seen this online and had an idea of what I wanted to make with this. And in doing so, I knew I wanted to add a little more turquoise into this. And so I bought a fun batik that I liked, and then I bought a background that has some cute little hearts, and they're turquoise hearts, and I thought that would be really a fun little addition. So I've got these. This is nice because if you like a particular fabric, you get the number and you can order that one if you want yardage. But let's take a look at what we have here. Let's see, let's go this way. So we go from some pretty dark with a black background, and then we kind of get a little blending. There's just the littlest bit of purple in there. And now we get this lighter turquoise with some purple. Ooh, there's some serious purple. And this actually brings in a little green and pink, so this gets into some multicolors. And this is one of my favorite little florals I like, with the blue, and it has some not pinks, purples. And of course, I just love anything with this floral background. This is sort of a fern. And check this out. Ooh, we're getting into my favorite turquoise colors here. And this is a print we've seen before. It looks like kind of a ginkgo leaf a little bit. And hibiscus. Who doesn't love a hibiscus? Oh my goodness, that's so pretty. And look at these. Ah, yes. And some petaled flowers. Just nothing in particular. I don't think a certain kind of flower, but it is pretty, and it clusters, and it's different sizes, and the colors sort of blend across. So I really like this. The idea that I have here is for a really fast and easy Charm Square quilt. You've seen the pattern before, the Meandering Paths, and I want to show you another way to make it. And I love using these colors. Now, like I said, I wanted to add a bit more turquoise, so I bought this. So that's going to bring some turquoise in. But I also like to add other charm squares, because I'm going to take these fat quarters and cut them down into pre-cuts. And I'll show a link up above that you can watch if you're not familiar with that. There's also a free download below for the templates that I use in order to cut these. And that way I always have extra 5-inch squares ready to go whenever I'm making a Charm Square quilt. So I just happened to have some extras, and I thought these would be really pretty to sort of brighten it up. I like blue and white, but I don't want to keep it too dark. These are wonderful colors. I love the contrast. The dark looks great, but I wanted a bit more of some light colors and a little bit more of the turquoise. So these are about, I don't know, maybe a dozen pieces that I'm going to use here, and I think it's going to look really terrific. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut out some charm squares from the fat quarters, and this is yardage. I'm going to cut out charm squares from here. So let's go ahead and get started on that, and we're going to be quilting before you know it. This is a really cool pattern. This too is also available down below. It's a really fun pattern. It's an easy pattern, and you can really play around with the design using this and the way you incorporate your different colors. So let's take a look at where we're heading here. This block goes together very easy. We simply put a background in the center and 2 focals on either side, just like this, and we sew them right sides together with a 1/4-inch seam. Press those seams to the darker side. So if you happen to be using dark here and light to the outside, you just want to press to that darker side so the seams don't show through on that lighter fabric. And what we're going to do is sew all our blocks this way, all our 5-inch squares, and this will equal about a 14-inch strip. It's going to depend on your seam allowance. And what you want to do is cut this down the center of your background. And what I prefer to do, rather than measure this is 14 and then cut it at 7, I want to make sure I'm getting down the center of this particular block. And it's right at 4.5. So if I cut this at 4 1/4, then I am going to get a really good even cut. Now these do not match up, these seams here, because the blocks that we're creating, the actual long strips, are going to be right there. They're going to be off center, so they're not going to line up exactly the same. And that means we don't have to match seams, which is one of the favorite ways I like to put a quilt together, because when it comes time to sew, I don't want to be fussing with matching all those little seams. I understand we have to match the blocks, but the individual seams in between is not something that I want to do. So you see how I did that? I just took these and I cut it down the center. These are now 5 inches. I'm going to cut those down the center, and these are the strips I'm going to put my quilt together with. So I'm going to finish sewing these up, and then I'll press them. I'll get them all cut, and then I'll show you how we're going to put this quilt together. It's very, very simple. You see, this assembly process right here is quick. The next step I have is I've created a way to balance out the colors so we don't have to worry about duplicating colors next to each other. With this many different fabrics, we want to make sure that the same fabrics don't end up being side by side, and I have a way to work through that. So let's go ahead and get to the next step, and I'll show you where we go from here. With all your strips cut, you want to divide them into 4 piles. And what I did is I took my dominant color and I put it in light and darks, and then I did my accent colors. This is all my turquoise, and this is all the multi prints with all sorts of different colors in them. And the reason I do that is as we're piecing these blocks together, I find to have a balance of colors amongst all the blocks works out better. That when I'm piecing the quilt, I have a little bit of everything in each of the blocks as I'm going along, so I don't have too much duplication or an area of the quilt that's particularly dark or light, etc. So this is something I do personally in piecing my quilts. This is not something that you have to do to make this quilt, but it's just kind of a way to balance your colors if you're dealing with a lot of different colors in your quilt, and that helps spread everything out. So the first thing we do is, like I said, I have the light blues and the dark blues. Those are my dominant colors. Then I have the turquoise, which is an accent, and then I brought in a bunch of multicolored blues for another accent. And I'm going to divide these into 2 piles, because out of each pile I'm going to make these blocks. And each block consists of 3 of the long rectangles. And you'll see how we have our background square, and background. It goes opposite each other in these 3 rows. Same over here. Now, the reason we do that is when we put these rows together, you see how we get our background alternating. And that's what we want to do, because we're not going to want to put these together this way. Then our colors all touch. This way the colors do not come side to side. We have corners that will match up, but we don't have side to side. Now, I take it one step further, and because my lights and my turquoises are pretty much the same number, the same quantity, if I do all of them with the blues to the outside or the turquoise to the outside, then I may end up with some all blue. And again, this is personal choice. I like to have my colors spread out, and I probably take this to a farther degree than most people are interested. But I do want to show you, because it may give you an idea of something that's going to work for you. But what you can see here is I took 2 blues and a turquoise, 2 turquoise and a blue. And then when I'm piecing my quilt, I can choose between these 2 different sets to see what's going to fit best in that next block situation or the next block assembly. So I do the same thing here. I have my darks and my multis, and I put 2 darks with a multi. Oh, I did 2 darks and a multi here. but here's my two multis with a dark in the middle. And then what I'm going to do, actually, I had this switched around. Look at that. So I'm going to put my blues on one side and the turquoise on the other, and then sew everything into a pair. And once these are all paired up, the beauty is that we can just take this block, and let's say we pair these two up, then all we have to do is turn this around and we can create a 4-patch, and this quilt is done before you know it. This is what makes it such an easy quilt. And granted, there are some seams to line up, but they're going to go together pretty quick because a 2.5 inch is going to be consistent. We've cut everything to size. We take the same seam allowance on every block. These are going to line up. If there's going to be any little fussy area, sometimes it can be this block, right, or this intersection between these 4 blocks. But I find for this quilt, I don't have that problem. So this is what we're going to do. So here's the trick now. There we go. We're going to have dark and turquoise. We're going to make our blocks of 3 strips each, and we're going to take one of the darks, one of the lights, and put them together like, put them together like this. And we want to make sure that fabrics, focal fabrics, are not adjacent, that we have a background between every fabric. This is going to give us our path, and you can see when I turn this around how our path continues like this. So that's the way this works, and I'm really excited to put this together and show you what the finished quilt is going to look like. The 4-patch that I do here is a very quick and easy way to balance out all your different colors, and I just love working it this way. Plus, a 4-patch makes putting a quilt together much easier. Take the smaller blocks, piece them into a larger block, and then put those all together, and it just works more efficiently for me, and it's my preference. Again, I'm just showing you what I do, and obviously you choose what works best for you and make adjustments accordingly. So here we go. We're going to make our patches with 3 strips each. We're going to combine those together, and then we're going to make a 4-patch. So let's go ahead and get all that finished, and we're going to piece this quilt together. I have my 9-patch blocks all sewn together, and I am going to arrange my quilt with the white corner to the outside. And this is the 4-patch that I put together. I'm using a total of 36 blocks, so I have 9 of these. The pattern actually calls for 56, and that's for a larger lap size quilt. So I'm just going for a smaller one here. It's going to be about 45 inches square. One of the options I wanted to show you is this is how I'm going to lay the quilt out. So let's say we've got 3 by 3. Actually, this was this way. So this dark corner, I keep them all the same in my pile. So as I lay them out, I know sort of what my reference point is, but then I can do with it what I want. If I don't like these so close together, I can switch this, or I can just turn this around. And now we're good to go. So these blocks can be turned. Another idea is if you are going to put your blocks in this direction. Let's see, I would probably go here. And this way your stripes, so to speak, are vertical, and then your horizontal path is going to be from side to side. There's a couple different ways you can put it together, and it's entirely up to you what you prefer. So have some fun with it. Put some, some fabric blocks laid out on the floor, on the bed, on the wall, and just kind of play around with it and see what works and what you like best. There's a lot of color in here, so it's really kind of hard to choose a block that I can't put next to each other because there's so many different colors. And I did that intentionally because when I go to put the quilt together, that's not the point in time that I want to be fussing about where a particular block is. I like to do that farther in advance in my quilt prep than towards the end. So here we are. I'm going to go ahead and put this together. Let me bring it back and we'll take a final look. I'm so excited. I hope you enjoy this so far. With all the 4 patch blocks put together and into a larger 9 patch, oh my goodness, we've got more patchwork lingo to deal with here. I'm going to get tongue-tied, but I love all these prints. Look at this. It's a little quilt. Like I said, it measures about 45 inches square. But it's sweet. It would make a wonderful little baby quilt, and all those pretty colors and fun patterns and designs. And it's just such a nice, simple, easy pattern. And you can do so much with it. You can do it with just a few colors. You can fill it up with all kinds of colors, and it looks wonderful all together. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you're going to give it a try yourself. The link to the pattern is down below. And find some fabulous fabrics that you love and you want to put together into a quilt and get started today. So thanks so much for being here. It's always my pleasure to have you join me in my sewing room and quilting away together. It's a lot of fun. I appreciate it. So please subscribe if you haven't already, and give me a thumbs up if you love this video. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.